Okay. Here we are. Okay. So once again, thank you all for joining this morning, and so nice to have this Sangha with everyone. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we will be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 19, text number 26. Shrutva gatam devayani mene prastobam atmanaha stripum sho sneha vaiklavyat parihasam iveritam. So, translation here. When Devayani heard Maharaj Yayati's story of the he-goat and she-goat, she understood that this story, which was presented as if a funny joke for entertainment between husband and wife, was intended to awaken her to her constitutional position. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When one actually awakens from material life, one understands his real position as an eternal servant of Krishna. This is called liberation. Muktir hitvanyata rupam svarupena vyavastitihi. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10, text number 6. Under the influence of Maya, everyone living in this material world thinks that he is the master of everything. Ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. One thinks that there is no God or controller, and that one is independent and can do anything. This is the material condition, and when one awakens from this ignorance, he is called liberated. Maharaj Yayati had delivered Devayani from the well, and finally, as a dutiful husband, he instructed her with the story about the he-goat and she-goat, and thus delivered her from the misconception of material happiness. Devayani was quite competent to understand her liberated husband, and therefore she decided to follow him as his faithful wife. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'd like to once again thank you all for joining this morning, and also would like to sincerely seek everyone's blessings and well wishes. Adi Purusha Prabhu, Arjuna Prabhu, all of the assembled devotees here, Bhima Prabhu, and so many of our wonderful devotees here. Just would like to seek your blessings that we can have a meaningful and inspiring discussion this morning, and derive something that we can carry with us as we continue to aspire on this path of Krishna consciousness. So in this verse, we're hearing about, in this chapter, this story of the he-goat and she-goat has been narrated. And now we are hearing that, in fact, this story may sound like a joke or some entertainment between husband and wife, but that in fact, Maharaj Yayati narrates this to Devayani really in the mood of offering her an understanding of our material bondage and encouraging her to become liberated, to take shelter of that which is not binding to this world of illusion. So it's powerful to hear from Srila Prabhupada that this is something that his words had that effect because of his liberated state, and her also being very advanced and willing to receive the message as it was, that she also aspired at that time, she decided to follow and to seek liberation. And as we will see in the subsequent verses here, she does just that, and she does very powerfully seek liberation in such a way that the result is immediate. Now, how is it that this story had such potency? Because for us, we may hear the story and on some level we can say it can almost sound like a folk tale. It can almost sound like a kind of moralistic kind of tale that is, of course, has a message, but at the same time may not have such a strong effect on someone hearing that story. So there are a few factors at play here. Of course, the first is that, the words of a pure devotee, the words of a self-realized soul, have genuine potency, have the ability to penetrate so many layers of conditioning. But at the same time, we hear quite a lot about attention. Attention is also very, very important. This practice of shravanam, that we're hearing clearly, because if we're engaged in inattentiveness, then even the most potent message may pass us by. So in this particular case, we have the pure words of Maharaj Yayati, which is like a seed, and we have the receptive and realized hearing of Devayani, which is like receptive soil for that seed. And in that way, something can grow and fructify. And, if you have a seed that is not powerful, and if you have soil that is not rich, then it's very unlikely that you'll be able to have a nice yield. So in this way, the two together, there's a very powerful effect. And of course, Srila Prabhupada, one of his very first messages that he gives, there was an LP, a record that was released. The exact year I'm uncertain. I think I want to say 1967, 68. it's his chanting of Hare Krishna, and then he gives a purport to the Mahamantra. And in that Mahamantra purport, he mentions that chanting coming from one who is not a pure devotee can be akin to milk touched by the lips of a serpent. That it can be good milk, but if it's touched by the lips of a serpent, it also is considered to have a poisonous effect. So in this way, we can say that, if this story, or if any spiritual message or mantra or so on, has been recited by someone who does not possess realization, or who does not at least possess a very sincere aspiration to become a servant. In that way, we can say that the message won't have the same potency, and in fact can be harmful. So we often see in Srila Prabhupada's purports that he warns against hearing from people who are, he uses the term professional reciters, or those who are, academic scholars of these shastras, but are not practitioners or bhaktas. So, here in this case, the storytelling of Maharaj Yati, because he's a self-realized soul, it's not just a mere folk tale. It may sound like one externally, but it's deeply backed by his own realization. I'll just share the screen here. We'll take a look at a few verses along the way. So, of course, this brings to mind Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So we see very clearly here that a prerequisite for one who wants to impart spiritual knowledge is that they need to have had the experience of the truth of the knowledge, that it's not just theoretical, it's something that they've had an experience with. So this is very relevant for us in our spiritual life, that devotees who we're hearing from, that the spiritual teacher's vani, the message and the words that the spiritual master is sharing, is so deeply powerful, not only because of the content of the speech, but because of the devotion and the life of bhakti that the spiritual master is living. So this we talk about achar and prachar. So teachers will naturally give both achar, which means their conduct, their example, and prachar, the actual teachings, the spoken or professed teachings. So their behavior and their manner of really living the teachings, not only does it give potency to what they are sharing, but it also brings the teachings to life. It gives us, if we're fortunate enough to observe the behavior of a great devotee and be in the presence of great devotees, it really takes the words off the page, we can say. It really shows us how it's enacted in life, and it brings the teachings to life for us, and it inspires us even further to follow them. And we often hear about knowledge and realization, gyan and vigyan, that the difference between knowledge and realization is when the teachings are applied. So it's really through our relationships with the spiritual master, with great teachers, with senior devotees on the path, that we are able to internalize the teachings on a deeper level. And we need relationships so much in bhakti. And I can always feel myself when there's been too much time that has passed, I haven't spent some quality time with close devotees, and friends in spiritual life. We can feel the difference, things I can say for myself, sometimes things start to feel a little bit theoretical. It gets a little bit cerebral, more than in the heart. So it's so important that we have these opportunities to come together with devotees, to have loving interactions with them. Of course, dadati pratigrinati, and we hear in Nectar of Instruction about the 6 loving exchanges, to engage in these loving exchanges with devotees, because this really brings life into the teachings, and all of these practices go together. So, the relationship aspect of bhakti, it just gives us so many opportunities to see the teachings come to life and to experience that movement from gyan to vigyan, and to see it in others, and to hopefully begin to feel it within ourselves. So here, the main thrust, we can say, of the story that Maharaja Yati tells of the he-goat and she-goat is an encouragement for us to give up our sort of illusory controlling mood. The story details how the he-goat feels a certain proprietorship of the she-goat, of his world, and he's feeling very happy. And then very quickly, his joy is taken away from him in a very visceral and kind of intense way, and then it's restored. But after that restoration, he just goes back to kind of his usual activities. So we all have this desire for control, to some degree or another, because it's with us from our very birth, and also from countless lifetimes, and it's something that we may have incidents in which so many examples in which we are reminded that we are not in control. And what we're encouraged to do on the path of bhakti is to take those experiences as instructive and as humbling, and to not allow ourselves to forget what the teaching behind these experiences are. Because it may be very easy to have some experience of loss of control, any number of things, whether it's losing some opportunity in life, or falling from a certain position, having to completely reconfigure our material circumstances, having some loss in our life, death, and having relationships break up, or having challenges in our family life. So many constant reminders: illness, unexpected calamities. So all of these experiences really serve to remind us that we are not in control. But quite easily, we can, even from these experiences, recover, right? Recover. We may say, thank goodness, thank you, Krishna, I'm back to my normal state. But what that can sometimes be, quite insidiously, is like, I'm back to my normal state of believing that I'm in control of my own circumstances, and believing that I've got this all on lockdown. So in a certain way, we want to aspire that when these circumstances befall us, that we see them as Krishna's mercy. Of course, the devotee does see these as Krishna's mercy, that it's far less than what we actually deserve according to our own karmic circumstances, and that Krishna is also allowing us to be brought ever closer to him and ever closer to the truth by the experiences that we do have. But it's very easy for us to kind of snap back into our routine and say, oh, well, thank God things are back to normal now. But at best, we can see these experiences as reminders that we're not in control, and they can increase our genuine sense of dependence upon Krishna and the devotees. Just wanted to share one song by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur that is very much speaking to this experience of believing from the very beginning that we're in control, and having a difficult time sort of shaking that conception. And the song is called Bulia Tomare, and it's from his text Sharanagati, which does mean surrender, so very much in line with what we're speaking about today. I'll just read the English translation. It's quite sobering to hear these words of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. and gives us a sense of how do we become conditioned in this way. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, I forsook you, O Lord, and came to this world of pain and sorrow. Now I submit my tale of woe at your lotus feet. While still in the unbearable fetters of my mother's womb, I saw you before me. You revealed yourself, but briefly, and then abandoned this poor servant of yours. At that moment, I swore to worship you after taking birth, but birth came, and with it the network of worldly illusion, which robbed me of all good sense. As a fondled son in the lap of relatives, I passed my time smiling and laughing. My parents' affection helped me to forget the pangs of birth, and I thought the world was very nice. Day by day, I grew and soon began playing with other boys. Shortly, my powers of understanding emerged. I read and studied my lessons incessantly. Traveling from place to place, proud of my education, I grew wealthy and maintained my family with undivided attention. O Lord Hari, I forgot you. Now in old age, Bhaktivinoda is sad. He weeps. I failed to worship you, O Lord, and instead passed my life in vain. What will be my fate now? So here we have this very powerful and very sobering account of just the different ways in which we become conditioned to feel that we are the controllers of our own little universe here, and that it starts quite simply. You know, we do receive affection from our loved ones, and on some level, of course, this is important. We do want that. As far as our material circumstance goes, this is vital. I mean, you know, we do need affection in this world, but at the same time, the false ego can very easily appropriate these things, and you know, it's just a natural thing that does happen. And similarly, our education, which is something that can be used in Krishna's service very beautifully, but we can become proud, and we receive, you know, various tastes of adoration or appreciation in this world. And if we are not fortunate to have the right conception about this, it can very easily, you know, create these impressions of being in control. So here we are reminded again and again, you know, that we will be reminded that we're not in control. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his humility, is saying here that now at the end of his life, he's wondering, what can he do now? He passes life without worshiping Krishna. Of course, we understand that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is incredibly advanced personality, and he's saying this mainly for our benefit, but this is also the humble mood of a devotee. So we hear also that, you know, our life circumstances of birth, death, old age, and disease are strong reminders that we are not in control. And in the preface to Nectar of Devotion we were reading recently, Srila Prabhupada discusses that death quite often is a representative of Krishna, especially for those who are not of a theistic kind of mindset. Then death is a representative, powerful representative of Krishna, reminding people that they are not in control. And if they did not come to that realization prior, if that illusion persisted, then surely at the time of death, they will be confronting that. So the words and example, the achar and prachar, as we discussed, of a self-realized soul, they serve to show us that voluntary surrender is not a terrifying notion. It can be terrifying as we're still working through our attachments in this world, but we see those who have surrendered completely and how they have not, they're not worse off by having done that. It's actually, we see that they have become fully realized. They've fully fulfilled their purpose, and they're carrying so many gifts and so many wonderful experiences. They become so effulgent and attractive to us because they're fully themselves. And that's an important assurance that Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 22, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam, that he preserves what we have and carries what we lack. So the process of realization and surrender is not a question of losing ourselves. It's much more, we are uncovering our true essence. And as Srila Prabhupada says here in his purport, that when we abandon this need to control, it is then that we come into the realization that we are eternal servants of Krishna. Jivera Swarupahai Krishnera Nityadas. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we are told that this is our nature, eternal servants of Krishna. So surrender is frightening. We have many preconceptions and fears and conditioning regarding surrender. Even the word surrender sometimes is frightening to us, in terms of it spells out defeat for many of us, according just to the conditioning we have around this notion. But a very important consideration is, to whom are we surrendering, right? And we're surrendering to the spiritual master, who is our ultimate well-wisher and shelter. And ultimately, we're surrendering to Krishna, who is the supreme controller. He's described as the supreme controller. So while we may try to be minute controllers, Krishna is the supreme controller. And fortunately, he's also our ultimate friend and well-wisher, Karuna Sindhu, ocean of mercy, and Bhakta Vatsal. There's a nice story. I please forgive me, I forget the details of which acharya this was. But one of our acharyas, I believe one of the Goswamis, made a statement that he was very upset when he heard that Krishna is Bhakta Vatsal, which is one who's compassionate toward his devotees, because he felt, I have no devotion. I'm not a bhakta, so Krishna won't be compassionate toward me. But then he heard Krishna's other name, Dina Bandhu, that Krishna is the friend of the distressed, the friend of the fallen. And after he heard that, he said he became very happy, because then he felt that, okay, Krishna is on my side because I'm distressed, I'm fallen. So he was assured by that. So Krishna is there for us, that when we surrender, as we progressively surrender, we're not going to lose ourselves. We're only going to be caught by him more and more. And we see that through the entire course of the spiritual path, even the highest stages of bhakti, the highest stages of bhava and Krishna prem, they involve relinquishing proprietorship. And at some point, Krishna is in control, but it's not something fearsome. It's something that is giving great ecstasy and great joy. And we're seeing that exemplified. Though Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, he's also showing this mood of what is it like to fully surrender and allow yourself to become fully overwhelmed by love of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada also exemplifies this so beautifully in his life, in his teachings, and particularly in one poem that he shared, Markine Bhagavat Dharma, which is a poem that he wrote on his way to the Western world. It's really like a mission statement for our Krishna Consciousness movement. It's very beautiful to read. And one of his famous lines there is, Lord, just make me dance as you wish. So this is the mood of a surrendered soul. And in our story today about, the story told by Maharaj Yayati to Devayani, the ultimate effect that story had is that it inspired surrender. So when the potent words of a self-realized soul really and truly enters the heart, we let those words into our heart, the result is that progressive surrender, self-realization, discovery of our true self, and really wanting to act in this world more as our true self and less according to our conditioning and our sense of false proprietorship. So I will stop here, and very eager to hear any thoughts, reflections, questions. Hare Krishna. Thank you. I'm sorry, Prabhu. For some reason, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for being my friend. All right. Do we have any questions or reflections from the audience? Dear devotees, go ahead. Don't be shy. Athena, do you have an intelligent question?
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Dina, Bandhu. Good morning. Thank you for class. I just wanted to say I really appreciated about the two, that hearing is such a reciprocal, interactive experience. It's about the speaker being ready and the speaker being ready and the hearer being also receptive. And I just thought that was such a good point. And it's not just the words. I remember I heard Professor Edward Bryant speak about the Bhagavad Gita. And when I met him, he was in his Professor Edward Bryant thing. And then, but even still, he was supposed to be talking about the Yoga Sutras, but all this bhakti would start coming out of him. And then I later found out, oh, he's a devotee. No wonder he's the only person that made the Yoga Sutras interesting for me because it wasn't so much the text and he knew all of that, but it was also his heart pouring forward and ultimately his bhakti. So thank you for reminding us about that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Jomanajaya. Yeah, you brought that out beautifully. That, that's a practical example of even hearing about a topic like Yoga Sutras, which may not be so much directly, bhakti oriented, that if it's being spoken by a devotee, very naturally we will be hearing so much depth and of that person's devotion. And I have a converse example actually, which I wanted to share, which is that during my college days, I did take a class on Ramayana, and it was a class that was presented in an academic context. But it was, I was just thinking at that time, I had already met the devotees and everything. I was thinking, oh, it'd be nice to be able to do this in school and study. And I strongly remember just the experience. It wasn't an extremely discouraging experience, but also it didn't have that sweetness. It didn't have that potency. It felt like we were studying an epic poem or something like that. It was dry. And the teacher was very expert in Ramayana. I mean, she knew it in and out. I mean, in terms of in the mind and just understanding all of the nuances of the story, different regional tellings of Ramayana. And actually, even furthermore, you went into her office and there were pictures of Lord Ram. It's quite interesting, but it's just coming from a completely different kind of standpoint. And of course, there's benefit, no doubt, in having pictures of Lord Ram in your office and reading Ramayana all the time. But the point is, you can hear where someone's coming from when they're reading a spiritual text. If the personal connection is not there on a deep level, it's not the same.
Hare Krishna, Dina, Bandhu, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Andrea. Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I wanted to really share that my takeaway, which was very early on, where you said that the words of a self-realized soul have potency, but however, attention is important. So if we're not attentive, it could be the most potent, pure devotee in the world, and it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. And for me, in a practical standpoint, is when I am listening to lectures, sometimes I get into a habit of maybe I put a lecture while I'm doing laundry or something, and just understanding that as much as it's better to do that than not listening to anything at all, at the same time, I'm not getting all the potency of the lecture because I'm not being super attentive to it. So again, not something for me to beat myself up about it, but just to be aware, to kind of be in that mindset of the attentiveness is important, and to just kind of keep that in mind. And I also really liked where you said about how relationships are important because they keep the teachings in our hearts as opposed to being theoretical. And that's really potent for me because we're in the midst of, my mother is visiting us for Thanksgiving, and having my mother like be a part of our kirtan to the deities, and having her, like she just very naturally, I don't know, it's just Krishna's mercy, she's always been very open to all these things. And so we sat down, my husband had the mridanga, I was going to sing, and then she very naturally was just like, well, what about me? What instrument am I going to play? She's like, give me some spoons, I'll play something. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you wanted to play. You want these kartals? And she's never had a kartal class, and she just figured it out. And she's just playing along, and I'm sorry to get long with it, but it just brought such tears to my eyes to just be sitting there, and there are our deities, and there's my mother, who's your first guru, right? Like, and we're all just doing this beautiful thing together. And it felt like a Krishna magic moment to me. And again, to bring it back to what you said, it's that relationships are important and affection is important, but keeping Krishna in the center of it is most important. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that story, Andrea. That's so beautiful. I'm so happy to hear about that. Just, picturing your mother there, and that she's the one who asked for the instrument and wanted to participate. Yeah, and it's very, very assuring when these relationships that are already so meaningful to us and are already so deeply, part of who we are, that we have the opportunity to have Krishna be in the center, because this gives that relationship a quality of eternity, more and more. So that's wonderful, wonderful. Adi Purusha Prabhu, did you have any comments or thoughts about this?
Wonderful class, very perfect, and very, very refreshing to hear from you. One interesting thing, although it's totally obvious, but to emphasize it, this is a conversation between a married couple, right? And there are married couples, a lot of the devotees are married couples. And then in the context of the marriage, there's some blueprint, some map, some decision-making about what direction are we going in, and is this where we're going to go, and where will we go, and what are our options? And here, the couple, it's a humorous thing. I've had a lot of my godbrothers say, I told the he-goat story to my wife last week, and you know what? What are we thinking? What are we going to go? What are we doing here? Can we adjust the trajectory? And that's a very interesting thing, that people are connected, probably the hearts are tied together. It's like a three-legged race. And unless you're going in the same direction, and unless there's these kind of discussions about, what are we going to prioritize? How are we going to rearrange the furniture in our life? What about our schedule? What about our diet? What about our, our sadhana participation schedule, our commitment to what, will we have kirtan? Will we have deities? Will we take care of them? Will there be flowers? What about our sexual activity? That's like a interesting thing, because people get into a pattern, and it may not be the best pattern, but then in order to change it, they have to really talk to each other and say, whoa, stop the music. Whoa, wait a minute. Let's clean this up a little bit. Let's improve. Let's take a little tapasya decision. So the conversation is really important, that a couple have a heavy influence on each other. They can pull each other up, they can pull each other down, or they can just become complacent together, or they can say, hey, this is time that we draw a line in the sand and, get a little more serious than we've been. Let's look at what we're doing and pray about it and take a little slightly different course here. So that's interesting. All of us have that, people in our life that are close to us and connected to us and who we live with. So that's nice to have that kind of conversation going on. How wonderful is Krishna? We got that in there, huh? We sneezed that in there a little bit, Wonderful.
For that, Adi Purusha Prabhu. Yeah, very true. Very, very
I
true.
forget that in class all the time, you know. We're here to glorify the Lord, and how wonderful Krishna Day is providing us with other people's experiences and instruction and inspiration and examples, and let us also be examples to please Krishna.
Negative examples or positive examples. Examples of what to do and what not to do.
They go hand in hand. Athena wants to say something.
Oh, Hare Krishna, Athena, and also I'll make sure to respond to these. I see these messages in the chat. We'll make sure to talk about these too.
Chat.
Yeah, Athena, please. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you very much.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Dina, Bandhu, Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. Such a wonderful class always. It's always so nourishing. It touches the heart and the soul. So thank you. I just wanted to add a comment, and it made me remember actually after Andrea mentioned this about how the inattentiveness, and as you very so nicely put, that even if it's just wisdom and truth coming from pure devotee, if one is inattentive and not able to receive, then, well, as Andrea said, it goes one ear and out the other and doesn't have that effect. But if anyone else, there's a, I remember hearing from Jaya Jagannath Prabhu, and he mentions pramada, and pramada is the inattentiveness. And sorry, my Sanskrit is not great, but it's not one of the 4 defects, but essentially just looking it up quickly, pramada also meaning kind of this inattentiveness, this negligence, is actually which it produces forgetfulness, and therefore in one sense is kind of the root problem, the forgetfulness, and is cause of all pains and issues with us or humans. I don't know I don't remember the Sanskrit for the 4 defects, but I remember that being very much emphasized, that that's why we perhaps make mistakes, or just the forgetfulness part is because of inattentiveness, and that's one of our biggest issues. I don't know if you want to expound on that or anyone else who listens to JJP's classes, but he has mentioned pramada many times. Thank you.
Thank you, Athena. Yeah, thank you so much for that point. Yeah, definitely that, inattention, we sometimes hear that inattention is the root of all of the offenses in chanting as well. That, the 10 offenses to chanting. A lot of the time we can associate inattentiveness with all of those, because as you said, inattentiveness also means to be inattentive to our actual position, or to be inattentive to our purpose, to be inattentive to the glories of the devotees, the inattentive to the glories of the holy name, so on and so forth. So in that sense, that pramada is definitely something that prevents us from, prevents us from properly receiving the mercy that is being offered to us so liberally. In a certain way, it's just flowing. It's flowing all the time. And but if we're forgetful of it, or if we are not really seeing it for what it is, then we miss out. We miss out a lot. And it's something that I remind myself all the time. And for some reason, one example that has been helpful is that, if you go to the most beautiful place in the whole world, but you're reading a magazine while you're there, you won't appreciate the beauty at all. Somebody could bring you to this place and say, here we are. But, if you're reading a magazine as you're walking or something like that, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in the most beautiful place, or you could be in the, 10 by 10 room. It's just, it has to do with what we are, beholding and appreciating. And with that gratitude comes inspiration.
Thank you so much. I love that example. Thank you. Haribo.
Haribo, Athena, always really appreciate your sincere questions and, your inquisitive spirit in Krishna consciousness. It's really inspiring. Thank you. And just wanted to briefly address Priti. I hope I'm pronouncing okay. Priti stated, great lecture. It's easy to forget about not being the controller and truly surrendering when your day job requires you to be in charge, right? So this is an important thing. Yes, like on some level, according to our individual functions, whether it's work or family life, or even, you know, in a spiritual community, we may have some position of a managerial position, something like that. Sometimes we are required to kind of, you can say, take charge or to have that role. But there's a nice Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj. He has some beautiful books about conscious leadership. And something that he emphasizes is that the best leaders are actually, they have the consciousness of being a servant. They're servant leaders. So a great leader in that way, yes, they recognize that they may have some proclivity or some gift of being the managerial person or being the person in charge or directing others. But at the same time, in their heart, they're thinking, this is my way of serving. This is my way of serving Krishna. This is my way of serving others. Even in the example of a guru, you know, a spiritual master will think, well, this is my way of serving by giving initiation, by guiding people in spiritual life. So in that sense, we can say that we may be required to take charge in an external sense. That may be a role or a gift that we have, but at the same time, our consciousness about that can be one of service, and that really transforms the whole experience, not only for those who we are trying to guide, but also for ourselves. You know, it really prevents the ego from latching on to it too heavily, because yeah, you know, any kind of leadership position in this world is a slippery slope. So it's a good thing to think of it as, okay, this is my service, and somehow I've been placed in this role to serve. So let me try to do that in a humble mood, and to recognize that Krishna is always in control, ultimately. And Jumanajaya shared a nice quote here from Danadhar Swami Maharaj, where attention goes, energy flows. Yes, yes.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada once said, I hope it's Srila Prabhupada, my God. So he said, act externally as if you are in control, but internally understand that Krishna is in control. So if you want to be the controller, do it externally. But internally, we should develop this mood of being a servant and understanding how I'm just a puppet, I'm just a fool, you know. Priti, you're not a fool, I'm a fool. And speaking about myself. Okay. Dina Bandhu Prabhu, thank you. Wonderful nuggets, as Athena Prabhu says. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Any further thoughts from anyone, or we can conclude for this morning?
Yeah, Kartik is appreciating you. He says, thank you for the very nourishing class.
Thank you, Kartik Prabhu. Thank you. Oh,
Bhima.
Howdy, howdy.
So grateful, so happy that you share something, Prabhu. Please.
Hold on one second here. Let me, there we go. Hold on. There we go. There we are.
Hare Krishna. I'm so happy to see.
That's my face there. And I'll make it quick. Adi Purush shared a story yesterday. I'll make it really quick. He said when he was a little kid, he used to sit, and this would be the 50s. He used to sit behind his father while his father drove like an old Nova or something like that. And he would stand up. He was like 3 or 4. And he would stand up in the back seat and reach over and hold on to the steering wheel while his father was driving. And his father would, put his hands down underneath the steering wheel and let Adi Purush, as a baby, toddler Adi Purush, if you can imagine such a thing, steer the wheel, make it seem like he's steering the wheel while the father was driving underneath. And he would praise Adi Purush and go right here. And Adi Purush would, turn the wheel with the help of his father and not knowing. And then after a while, his father, obviously, this was long before seatbelts and kids thing, you could get away with something like this. But after a while, the father said, you know what, I got to get him like a car seat with one of those wheels attached to it. I don't know if anybody's seen it before. They have a steering wheel so the kid can pretend he's driving. And the kid, of course, does not know. Oh, did I lose you? Okay. The kid does not know. And so Adi Purush said he got that and he got his own steering wheel and his father would be driving. And he said that after about a couple of weeks, he realized that when he moved the wheel, the car would not go this way or that. And he realized that he had been that he had been given a steering wheel that only simulates that he is driving. So this is sort of like when we come to Krishna, and trust me, for someone who's always pretended like he was driving. And to this day, I always think I have the steering wheel. To this day, anyways, he realized that it had been a hoax, that his steering wheel, and he said he felt like when he got in and put behind the wheel, he would say, oh, this thing is useless. I have no control over where this car is going, and etc. So as devotees, as soon as we start chanting Hare Krishna, it's just so, we just want to, control our devotional service, somehow be in control of what service we do, or what we learn, or how much we give up, or which turn we'll take in our devotional life. But actually, believe it or not, if you step back far enough, of which 60 years or has done to me, you step back and you realize you never had any control over the wheel whatsoever, that Krishna has the wheel. If you get up and chant your rounds and follow the 4 regs, Krishna takes over that wheel, and you can just kick back and relax and trust that Krishna is going to get you to your destination with a capital D, with all safety. So Hare Krishna, I just thought I'd share that. Adi Purush told me that. Of course, when he told it, it was much sweeter coming from the mouth of the babe himself. And once again, I appreciate your classes. You are all so wonderful, and I have so much hope for this movement when I see devotees like yourselves coming up through. I can see the golden age coming up through you devotees. Thank you very much for listening to me. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bhima Prabhu, please accept my obeisances. Thank you so much for sharing this. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you, Adi Purusha Prabhu, for offering that example. That's a really, really powerful way of viewing it, our sense of control. I'm going to be remembering that. That's going to stay with me. And what you shared about our own services. Yeah, that's very important too. And it's really heartening to hear what you said from your experience of if we're following, if we're chanting, Krishna takes the wheel. That's just what I needed to hear, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina Bandhu Prabhu. Thanks everyone for contributing to this class. Andrea, thanks for sharing your story with your mom. Give her a bucket. Give her a fork. Okay. Yeah. Everyone have a wonderful day. Give Krishna the wheel. Relax. Do your part. And Dina Bandhu Prabhu, thanks for bringing the golden age into the room.
Hare Krishna. This is a blessing. Blessing of Bhima Prabhu. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you all.
Jai. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone. Hare Krishna.